Your children are simply too disruptive for civilized gatherings. Perhaps it's time to consider leaving them with a sitter, my sister-in-law announced at Easter brunch loud enough for all 40 family members to hear while my 4-year-old was quietly coloring at the kids' table. I smiled, packed up our things, and agreed that we'd skip future events, watching her satisfaction bloom as she assumed she'd won some unspoken power struggle. What Caroline didn't realize as family gatherings mysteriously began canceling one by one over the following months was that the disruption she'd just banished wasn't my children. It was the anonymous benefactor who'd been quietly funding every Whitman family event for the past 5 years. The Whitman family gatherings were legendary in our Connecticut town. For generations, meeting monthly at the Fairfield Country Club, complete with catered meals, open bars, and activities for the dozens of cousins, aunts, uncles, and assorted relatives who treated these events like royal summonses. My husband James was the middle child of 5, successful enough as a lawyer but overshadowed by his older brother Richard's hedge fund career and his younger sister Catherine's marriage to old money. Then there was Caroline, Richard's wife, the self-appointed social secretary of the Whitman clan. She'd married into the family 15 years ago and immediately began reshaping it in her image, sophisticated, exclusive, and utterly intolerant of anything that disrupted her vision of WASP perfection. My children, Lily, 4, and Max, 6, were normal kids. They laughed, they played, they occasionally spilled juice or needed a bathroom break during Great Aunt Mildred's lengthy toasts. But to Caroline, they were chaos incarnate, especially compared to her own daughters, who sat like tiny mannequins in their matching Burberry dresses. Children should be seen and not heard, she'd tell me at every gathering, watching my kids with the expression of someone encountering a particularly offensive smell. In my family, we learned proper behavior before we were allowed at adult functions. I'd tried everything, bringing quiet activities, timing meals around naps, even hiring a babysitter to shadow us at events. Nothing satisfied Caroline. If Lily laughed too loud at her cousin's joke, it was disrupting conversation. If Max asked his grandfather about his golf game, it was interrupting adult time. But Easter was the breaking point. Lily had been sitting with the other children, carefully coloring a picture she'd drawn for her grandmother. She hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved from her seat, hadn't done anything but exist in Caroline's peripheral vision. Your children are simply too disruptive for civilized gatherings, Caroline announced, standing at the head table like she was delivering a corporate presentation. The constant noise, the running around, the absolute lack of discipline. Perhaps it's time to consider leaving them with a sitter. For everyone's comfort. The room went silent. 40 pairs of eyes swiveled between Caroline and me. James started to stand, his face flushing with anger, but I touched his arm gently. You know what, Caroline? You're absolutely right. I stood, smoothing my dress. We won't subject you to our children anymore. Come on, kids. Let's go home. Marissa, that's not necessary, James's mother, Ellen, started to protest. No, Ellen, Caroline has made her position clear. And since she's obviously the arbiter of who belongs at family gatherings, we'll respect her wishes. I helped Lily pack her crayons, my hand steady despite my rage. We won't attend any more family events. Caroline's smile was victorious. I think that's best for everyone. I gathered my children, both confused but compliant, and walked out with James. The last thing I heard was Caroline telling someone, finally, we can have proper adult conversations again. In the car, James exploded. We're not really skipping family events. My mother would never. Your mother sat there and said nothing while Caroline humiliated us in front of everyone. But the kids love seeing their cousins. And my grandmother will have to visit us separately. I won't subject our children to being treated like unwelcome guests at their own family's gatherings. What I didn't tell James was that this suited me perfectly. For 5 years, I'd been anonymously funding these elaborate gatherings, and I was tired of watching Caroline take credit for events she couldn't have afforded to throw. It had started innocently. When James and I were newly married, his family's gatherings were potlucks in someone's backyard, chaotic, warm, and genuinely connected. Then the recession hit. Richard's hedge fund took massive losses. Their father's business struggled. One by one, family members tightened belts and gatherings became sporadic. I'd just sold my tech startup for a number that still made me dizzy. James knew about the sale but not the full amount. I downplayed it as comfortable rather than generational wealth. So when the Whitman Family Trust suddenly received an anonymous donation specifically earmarked for family unity gatherings, no one suspected the newest in-law. The donations came quarterly through a maze of LLCs and charitable foundations. $50,000 here for a summer barbecue, $75,000 there for the Christmas gala. The family was told it was from a grateful former business associate of James's late grandfather. Caroline had immediately taken charge of planning, turning simple gatherings into showcases for her taste and social connections. I'd watched for 5 years as she preened over her events, claiming she'd negotiated deals with caterers, secured venues, arranged activities. In reality, she was spending my money while making me feel unwelcome at parties I was secretly hosting. But now? Now she'd given me the perfect excuse to pull the plug. 2 weeks after Easter, I received the first confused call from Ellen. "Marissa, dear, the strangest thing. The country club says our May reservation has been cancelled. Something about non-payment?" "Oh, how odd," I said, watching Max build Legos in our sunny playroom. "I'm sure Caroline will sort it out." "Well, that's just it. She says the family trust account that pays for these things is empty." "Empty? How is that possible?" "We don't know. Richard is looking into it, but in the meantime, we're having to cancel the Mother's Day brunch." I made appropriate sounds of sympathy while drafting an email to my financial manager confirming the cessation of all anonymous donations to the Whitman Family Trust. By June, the cancellations were piling up. The Memorial Day barbecue, the Father's Day golf tournament, the 4th of July celebration, all scrapped. Caroline tried to maintain control by suggesting more intimate gatherings at various homes, but without catered food and hired help, her enthusiasm waned quickly. "It's so strange," James said one evening, scrolling through family group texts. "Mom says they can't figure out what happened to the trust money. It's just gone." "Maybe whoever was donating decided to stop," I suggested, stirring pasta sauce made from tomatoes our children had helped grow in our garden, the kind of simple, chaotic family activity Caroline would have despised. But why now? After all these years? Who knows? Maybe they didn't feel appreciated anymore. The family WhatsApp group became increasingly frantic. Caroline tried to rally everyone to contribute personal funds, but the amounts she suggested were astronomical. $500 per family for a simple barbecue? Cousin Janet texted. "We used to do this in backyards for $50. "If we want to maintain standards," Caroline began. "Your standards," Catherine shot back. "Which apparently none of us can afford." The civil war I'd accidentally started was fascinating to watch. Without the elaborate events to plan, Caroline's role in the family diminished. She tried hosting a few gatherings at her home, but without professional caterers and staff, her perfectionist tendencies made everyone miserable. She actually used a ruler to space the place settings, James reported after attending one dinner without us. And she kept apologizing for having to use her everyday china. It was exhausting. Meanwhile, our home became the refuge for family members who missed the chaos Caroline had banished. Ellen started visiting weekly Messy Wednesdays, where the kids painted, baked, and played without worrying about noise levels. James's siblings dropped by for impromptu dinners where paper plates were perfectly acceptable and spilled juice was met with laughter, not lectures. "I miss having everyone together," Ellen confided one afternoon, watching Lily chase butterflies in our backyard. "But I have to admit, these smaller gatherings are easier. More real." "Family doesn't need country clubs and caterers," I said. "It just needs connection." Caroline doesn't see it that way. She's convinced someone is sabotaging her. Sabotaging her? How? She thinks someone deliberately stopped the donations to make her look bad. Richard hired a forensic accountant to trace the money. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "Any luck?" "None. Whoever set it up really knew what they were doing. The trail goes through so many foundations and trusts, it's impossible to follow." That evening, I told James everything. "You've been funding my family's parties for 5 years?" He stared at me across our kitchen table. "The country club? The caterers? Everything? I wanted your family to stay connected. After the recession, everyone was struggling, and gatherings were becoming rare. I could help, so I did. Anonymously. Would your brother have accepted charity from his younger brother's wife? Would Caroline have let me contribute to her events?" James was quiet for a long moment. "And you stopped because of what she said about the kids?" I stopped because I realized I was funding my own family's exclusion. Every check I wrote paid for another event where Caroline could tell me my children weren't welcome. We should tell them. No. I was firm on this. The money's gone. Let them figure out what family means without it. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially in families that share a group text. It was Richard who finally connected the dots. He'd always been sharp. You don't run a hedge fund without pattern recognition skills. He showed up at our door on a random Tuesday, looking like he'd aged 5 years in as many months. It was you, he said without preamble. The donations. The trust. All of it. James stepped aside to let his brother in. I kept loading the dishwasher, waiting. The forensic accountant found a pattern in the donations. They always came right after Marissa's company hit certain milestones. The amounts corresponded to percentages of publicly reported revenues. He sat heavily at our kitchen counter. How much did you really sell for? Enough, I said simply. Enough to fund 5 years of family gatherings without James even knowing? James knew I did well. He didn't need to know how well. Richard rubbed his face. Do you know what this means? Caroline has been taking credit for events you paid for. She's been, he stopped, the full implications hitting him. She banned your kids from gatherings you were funding. Ironic, isn't it? It's mortifying. My wife has been horrible to you while spending your money. She didn't know it was mine. That doesn't make it better. He looked genuinely distressed. Marissa, I'm so sorry. For all of it. The way she's treated you, the kids, everything. I don't want apologies, Richard. I want change. What kind of change? I dried my hands slowly, choosing my words. The family survived before the money, and it'll survive after. But only if you all remember what actually matters. Not the country club or the perfect place settings or the proper behavior. The connections. The chaos. The kids who might be loud but are learning what family means by watching us. Caroline won't see it that way. Then Caroline can host her own gatherings with her own money and her own guest list. The rest of the family seems to be figuring out alternatives. He was quiet for a moment. The 4th of July is coming up. Catherine offered to host at her place. Potluck style. Kids explicitly welcome. Sounds lovely. Would you and James bring Lily and Max? Are you sure? We might disrupt the civilized atmosphere. He flinched at his wife's words thrown back. I hope you do. God knows we could use some real life in this family again. After he left, James wrapped his arms around me. You realize the whole family's going to know by dinner time. Good. I'm tired of secrets. Caroline's going to lose her mind. That's a her problem, not a me problem. The family group chat exploded that night. Richard had gone home and, in true Whitman fashion, immediately told Catherine, who told their mother, who told everyone else. My phone buzzed nonstop with variations of shock, gratitude, and mortification. Marissa is the anonymous donor? Cousin Janet texted. Caroline banned her from events she paid for? Ellen called, crying. Darling, I'm so ashamed. We let Caroline treat you terribly while you were giving so generously. I didn't do it for recognition, Ellen. I did it for family. Which makes our behavior even worse. We forgot what that meant. Caroline, notably, went radio silent. Richard reported she'd locked herself in their bedroom, alternating between rage and humiliation. The woman who built her identity on being the family's social coordinator had discovered she'd been a puppet dancing on strings held by the person she deemed most unworthy. Catherine's 4th of July party was the antithesis of Caroline's events. Mismatched chairs on the lawn, burgers burned on one side, kids running through sprinklers fully clothed. Lily and Max were in heaven, chasing cousins with sparklers while adults actually relaxed instead of performing. This is nice, Ellen said, sitting beside me on a weathered bench. Reminds me of when the children were young. Before we got so caught up in impressions. It's what I hoped to preserve with the donations, I admitted. The togetherness, not the fancy trappings. But somewhere along the way, it became about the show instead of the substance. Caroline's influence, Ellen said quietly. We let her convince us that family meant perfection instead of connection. Caroline arrived late, alone, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. She moved through the party like a ghost, wincing every time a child shrieked with joy or someone ate potato salad with their fingers. Finally, as the sun set and the kids sprawled on blankets waiting for fireworks, she approached me. I suppose you're very pleased with yourself, she said stiffly. I'm pleased my children are playing with their cousins. Beyond that, I haven't thought much about it. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. I just stopped enabling it. She flinched. I didn't know. Would it have mattered? If you'd known the money was mine, would you have treated my children differently? Or would you have just been more careful about hiding your disdain? I don't. I wasn't. She struggled, probably for the first time in her life, to find the right words. I thought I was maintaining standards. Whose standards? Because they weren't this family's. Look around, Caroline. Look at your nieces and nephews laughing together. Look at Ellen helping Catherine serve dessert from mismatched plates. Look at Richard actually talking to his brothers instead of networking. This is the Whitman family standard: connection over appearance, love over luxury. She looked around, seeing perhaps for the first time what she'd tried so hard to eliminate. The beautiful chaos of family, sticky fingers and grass stains, burnt hot dogs and cheap beer, children's laughter drowning out adult conversation. I don't know how to do this, she admitted quietly. Then learn. Or don't. But either way, the family's moving forward. The only question is whether you're coming with us. I left her standing there and returned to my blanket, where Lily had crawled into my lap and Max was excitedly explaining fireworks to his grandfather. James caught my eye and smiled, and I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. This messy, loud, imperfect gathering was worth more than 5 years of country club events. The fireworks started, and Lily covered her ears at the first boom before peeking through her fingers in delight. Around us, the Whitman family sprawled across Catherine's lawn, no assigned seating, no perfect timing, no one monitoring volume levels or behavior. Just family, being family. Mommy, Lily whispered during a quiet moment between explosions, I like this party better than the fancy ones. Me too, baby. Me too. Caroline stayed through the fireworks, sitting stiffly on the edge of the gathering. But I caught her smiling once when her daughter abandoned perfect posture to lie in the grass with her cousins, pointing at the sky with unrestrained joy. Change doesn't happen overnight. Caroline still struggled with casual gatherings, still flinched at spills, still occasionally made comments about proper behavior. But she showed up. And slowly, gathering by gathering, she learned what I'd known all along, that funding family events had never been about the money. It had been about creating space for connection. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for a space that's become toxic is to stop paying rent and build something new. The Whitman family gatherings continued, smaller, simpler, but somehow bigger in all the ways that mattered. Potlucks replaced caterers. Backyards replaced country clubs. Paper plates replaced fine china. And children, all children, were always welcome. Because that's what family means. Not perfection or performance or proper behavior. Just showing up, chaos and all, and knowing you belong.